So God was saying to me today, he gave me a message. I was picking my kids up from school and I noticed it today, and I've actually been noticing it honestly for the last couple of weeks, that when I drop my kids off at school and I walk my littlest to his door, even though it's still dark out in the morning, there's like men with their kids looking at me, right? Giving me the look and looking at the other moms too, right? And I kind of noticed that, not so much because I noticed that, but because it was out of the norm, because I was actually making a joke a while back, not that far back, like a couple months back, that I was going to the gym and there were young girls there, not, but like probably between 20 and 30, and they were fit and they were cute, and the guys weren't even like paying any attention. And again, it's not to be lustful or anything like that, but it was also coinciding with Satan's agenda of trying to prevent men and women from doing what's natural, right? Obviously a man has to notice a woman and a woman has to notice a man, and they have to be open enough to look around, pay attention, not be zoned into their cell phone all the time, but like be aware of their surroundings. Like how men, because I'm older, so I came from the generation before cell phone. So if you liked a girl, you actually had to like make eye contact, you had to actually like flirt with her, go talk to her, zone her out, and if she wasn't interested, then you kept your options open, right? Because how else are you supposed to find a spouse, like a husband or a wife, if you're, closed off, or you're, for men, not all men, just saying, if you're zoned in on pornography or half-naked women on the internet, Insta model, whatever, if that's where your attention is being generated, or the bulk of it, which is obviously being puppeted by Satan, if your male attention is going towards an on-screen person that's not even in the flesh 5 feet beside you in the line at the grocery store or at the school, you're a single father, they're a single mother, you know what I'm saying? You're at the bowling alley. If you're too busy looking at online women, dating sites, pornography, things like that, things that we all know are like puppeted by Satan, how are you going to keep your options open and make yourself available to the opposite sex? And if you don't make yourself available to the opposite sex, how are you supposed to find a partner and get married and have children and do, have godly based relationships, right? In the right proper order that God intended. So going back to what I was saying about how the generation I come from, growing up, there was a lot more marriages, right? And it was the old-fashioned way where man and woman would meet at the bowling alley. Man and woman would meet through mutual friends at a dinner. Someone has a birthday dinner at their house and they invite, husband invites his friends, wife invites her friends, and then they meet mutual friends. Or through like a dance, or you know what I'm saying? There was occasions, and because people weren't inundated with their cell phone all the time, and they were focused on trying to find a partner in the flesh, in the physical, within their physical reach, not someone that was miles away or online or something like that, that's not even a real, like they're real, but it's like a digital version. That's, because that's where the focus was, there was obviously more relationships, healthy relationships, marriages, families, things like that, right? But because of the cell phone and how it's taken away the interest from men and women, women could be surrounded by a bunch of eligible men, but she's too busy online on the dating site to be able to try to keep her options open at her workplace, or the old-fashioned ways like I just listed of meeting somebody, right? And vice versa goes for men, right? Because they're too busy looking at lustful images and stuff, they're completely ignoring the women that are in their approximate location. And I never understood that. It was like, why go without talking to the cute girl or the cute guy that's at your gym 10 feet from you, but instead you completely bypass or ignore that person because you're so zoned in on your cell phone and who maybe liked your photo or, like via online, right? And so anyway, so God has been telling me this for a while, and I've even made past videos a couple months back about this, talking about how relationships are going to change, like the dynamic, like how people meet in the first place and how they go about. So if you're old like me, 30, 40, 50 years ago, that's not how you met a person, right? But this new generation, that's how they're thinking that they have to communicate with people, is via online means, right? But so God is saying that that's all been kind of puppeteered by Satan. He's been using the cell phone to his advantage, and as a result, over time, been able to create these like online fantasies and online relationships and online things that aren't it's not that they're not real, but they're not real. Like when Insta model that say lives, just for instance, lives in just say LA, California, LA, and she has thousands of followers in Canada. How does that work? Do you know what I'm saying? Like how? Like that person is miles and miles and miles away from you. They're hours and hours away. Like even if it was to be a something, and then meanwhile you have women in your hometown at the mall or at your grocery store, or maybe your buddy's wife's sister is the one for you, say, or maybe it would be a great relationship. Maybe God has something out there within your close proximity for you, but you're too focused on checking out what that model's latest photos are, and seeing what's available on the porn sites and things like that. And so God is saying is that due to Satan, basically orchestrating that and puppeting that, that's what's been happening with men and women. It didn't take overnight, but over years. We've been working on social media now for years. We've been having smartphones for years. That was Satan's loophole. Just like AI and everything else is his loophole. So it started out with, online stuff first, and it's built up from there. So he tries to use that tool on a daily basis, and has been using on a daily basis, to captivate males and females' attention, so that they're not so focused on trying to find a spouse, to try and start a family and do things the organic, genuine, old-fashioned God way, right? That God implemented us to start up relationships and partnerships. So because of that, when I was at the gym, I was laughing about it and laughing to God and saying, what the heck? Because I had noticed that there were, going back to what I was saying, there were like cute young girls there and cute young guys, and I'm thinking like, what's happening? Like if this was 2005 again, those guys would be over talking to those girls, right? No doubt about it, right? That's how it was when I was young anyways. Me and my friends, we couldn't go anywhere without the boys trying to come talk to us, right? And now today, I literally saw at the gym where like all the girls were oblivious to the men and the men were oblivious to the women. And again, I'm not trying to say to be lustful and to just, be, checking everyone out and scoping everyone. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that from someone that's of my generation, I can see the contrast is that if this was still back in like the 90s, early 2000s, there's no way that the guys I knew of wouldn't get attention from the girls. And there was no way that the girls I knew of wouldn't have been getting attention from the guys. And that's because it was before cell phones gaining all of our interest and our focus. And it was still somewhat normal where men knew they had to find a wife, to find a good thing and settle down. And, you had a name for yourself. Like if you were a girl that just fooled around, you had a name. And if you were a guy that fooled around, you had a name. In those days, it was commonplace to try to find someone in a old-fashioned way. Like I said, a birthday party, grocery store, at a park, you're walking your dog, they're walking their dog, things like that, that allowed people to start up an old-fashioned relationship and therefore get married and have children like the way that God intended it to be, right? But like I said, I noticed at the gym that wasn't even happening because Satan had captivated everyone's focus and attention so much that the men were more preoccupied with trying to see what was going on online with half-naked women and things like that were unavailable to them, unobtainable to them, and vice versa with the women, right? So I had noticed that at the gym, and I found that strange, and God had confirmed what I'm saying now to me. And he also said that when we hear about women being more bisexual and men being bisexual and all this, like lesbian, gay, bisexual, all this stuff, that's all the work of Satan as well, right? That's like, what I mean is, had that bisexual man and bisexual woman been being raised like it was the 60s again, before cell phone use and digital and AI and everything, and social media, if they were being raised in the 60s, 70s again, there's a very good chance they wouldn't actually be bisexual or lesbian or gay or whatnot, right? They would be straight. But because Satan has had free reign of the cell phone, the digital world, and the social media for the last 10, 15, 20 years, he's been able to change people's thought processes and stuff like that. And so now not only is it easily accessible to just for a man to find a woman online or for the night or whatever, or vice versa for a woman, but it's also, therefore, same thing, just as accessible for a man to find a man or a woman to find a woman, right? And obviously God never intended for men and women to find a opposite sex partner for the evening or just on weekends or whatever. And he also especially never intended for men to find men and women to find women. That whole thing is all just puppeteered by Satan, right? So that's another thing God was saying, is that in some of the cases why the women weren't looking at the men is because the women were interested in their same sex. And the reason why men weren't looking at the women is because they were interested in their same sex, right? So as I've made, like I said, videos on this in the past and how the relationship dynamics are going to change, well, in order for the dynamics to change, the thought process has to change to begin with, right? The thinking has to change before the action can change. So God is saying that he's been working on this since then, and I saw a kind of proof of this or evidence of this the last couple weeks when I've been dropping my kids off at school, because what I've been noticing is men, looking at me and looking at, so these are single dads with their kids and single moms with their kids, or maybe they're not single, but they look single because they're there alone, right? They're not there with a partner. And the men are looking at the women, and, I don't know if the women are looking at the men just yet, but the men at least are. And so God was bringing that to my attention, like, hey, look, see, I'm taking things back to what you said, like you had mentioned, you'd said in your last video, that video in the past, I'm taking things back to the original blueprint, right? The original way. And so I thought, well, it's just a fluke, but no, it's been happening for the last couple weeks when, I've been dropping off, when I've been picking up. So today I was picking up my kids from school, and I saw there was a nice day out, so I saw the men out walking to get the kids, and I saw the women out walking to get the kids, and the men were looking at the women like they used to 20 years ago. And so I was like, yes, God, like you're you're taking it back to the original design. So like that old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? And so how God originally designed for men and women to meet and to see each other, like think about the opposite sex, that it wasn't broke. We didn't need to fix it. It was just fine, right? And so there was that. And then God was also leading me into a little bit of another part to that, as he was saying, and so I was kind of asking him at the same time, like, okay, well, why did that even happen in the first place? Like, why did you, because I already am aware that Satan makes moves, but Satan can't move unless God allows it, right? God has to give the okay. So I understand what God is saying, but why did God allow Satan to derail things in the first place? And God said to me, well, you know how with your kids, if say it's cold out and they don't want to wear a coat, you can sit and argue with them and it's just going to cause a big fuss and a fight, right? Or you can just let them not wear the coat, and then they will learn the hard way. They will get cold, they will be they will freeze, and then they'll understand the importance of wearing a coat. And I'm going, yeah, I understand that, like kind of like the tough love thing, right? And so God is saying that that's how he is with us, is that sometimes he gives us what we want and we think it's really great. No different than if, say, your child is like, can I stay up late? You can sit and say, no, you can't. It's going to start a big fight, and they'll try and do it their way anyway. But God is saying, if you just say to them, sure, go ahead. within a week's time, they're going to be really tired and realizing, man, I got to get to bed early like mom and dad were telling me because I've been extra tired, right? So God is saying that sometimes in your parenting journey, it's best to just sometimes like give your kids what they want, even though you know it's not what's best, because he has a design that's the quickest teacher. Life is the best teacher, right? So life's experiences will teach them quicker than you can and easier than you can, that there's reasons why you say not to load up on candy because then their tummy does hurt, or wear a coat when you go outside because then they do end up cold, or don't stay up too late because then you're too tired, right? So you know how you understand with your wisdom that you've gained, your wisdom and knowledge, to explain, but the child unfortunately has to learn the hard way because they're just not quite as wise as you are, right? You're trying to help them, but they aren't there mentally yet. They're not at the level you're at through your wisdom and age and experience. And so God's saying as a tip is just give your child what they want. I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but God has the design in play that it'll teach them, the hard way will be the best teacher for them in the long run, right? So anyway, so God is saying he's the same way with us, is that sometimes he gives us what we want, even though he knows that's not what's best for us, simply because obviously we're not as wise as he is. We're not as experienced as he is. We are not where he is at with the way of him knowing things, right? Like how your 6-year-old isn't where you're at 35, right? Well, you're not at where you're at to the level that God's at, right? So no matter how old you get, even if you're 95, he's always going to know more than you and be 5 steps ahead of you, like how you are with your children, right? So God is saying he's the same way with us, his children, as we are with ours, is that sometimes he gives us what we want because life is the best teacher. So he knows we're going to fall up ahead. He knows we're going to cause ourselves delay and cause ourselves to stumble, but he allows it because that way we learn what was good for us and what was not. So going back to the example of your child wants candy, to eat candy all night, you say no because their tummy's going to hurt. You're right, okay? But they're not going to listen to you. They're just going to fight with you and end up sneaking it anyways, right? So your best bet is to just let them do it, because then they will be like, oh man, I did hurt my tummy. They were right, and I'm not going to do it anymore, right? So God is saying that when men and women, and I'm going to focus on men here for the most part, just because that's what he's saying. When men are sitting there saying, well, gee, I'm bored with my wife and this 20-year marriage and being a one-woman man and all this, and I need a little more excitement and stuff. God could have stepped in 20 years ago when these marriages and relationship dynamics started to derail and say, oh, no, you better not. But he didn't do that. He let the men and women have what they wanted. All right, you want to have something different? Go get it then. You think that the grass is greener on the other side? Go see then. You want to eat candy, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? I know it's going to make your tummy hurt, but go see for yourself, right? So when the child first gets the candy, they're very excited because they are getting to have what they want. But after eating it every day for a couple days, they're not so excited about it anymore, right? And they want to go back to what they were eating beforehand. And God is saying that's what's happened. That's just an analogy or example of how he put it to me, of what I'm trying to say of what's happened with men and women in relationships, is that men and women were complaining that God's original design, the old-fashioned way, was not exciting enough. It was boring enough. And because we were introducing, 20 years ago, 10, 15, 20 years ago, the introduction of social media and handheld computers, everyone started to get a computer in their home, things like that. And internet and online became available to us. God did have the ability to step in and shut all that down, just like you do as a parent. But he knew it was just going to cause fussing and fighting, and that we were going to sneak around to do it anyway. So therefore, because he knew the desire was there, he just let us have it, and therefore kind of let Satan take the reins. He allowed it. So Satan did take the reins, yes, but God allowed him to, because he knew that experience and wisdom in life was the greatest teacher. So now that we've gotten free range to just go, buck wild on what we want, our desires, our heart's desires, we're now realizing, well, gee, this isn't really what I want. So now there's men out there that are single with kids and they're like, I lost my relationship because I was constantly online. I was pursuing online relationships. I was constantly on pornography sites, you know, and as a result, I cheated on my wife and whatever else, or my girlfriend, whatever, and we broke up. And now that I've been free and single and alone because she gave him what he wanted, right? I now realize that it's hard to take care of the children on my own. And what I really need, maybe not what I wanted, but what I need is a mom figure for my children and a wife, right? A wife type, right? So that's the thing that frustrates women. And I know women are hearing me here, is that we'll get frustrated because men will get to be a playboy and be on the, you know, on the prowl if they want. We'll give them what they want. But then they will complain and say they don't want a girl that's out all the time, a girl that's all about, you know, that's half dressed, you know, all about her physical looks, you know, things like that. They want a real woman. But then when they get a real woman, they end up cheating on her, pushing her away. So they're never satisfied, because when they have the mom, wife, real woman type, then they are lusting and desiring someone that's the opposite of that. But when they are allowed and given the opposite of that, the novelty wears off, just like the novelty of the candy every night wears off. And then they start to get a tummy ache and a toothache, and then they want, you know, the natural, you know, easier thing, right? And so, you know, that's the thing that's been frustrating women for the last 10, 20 years when they're trying to date, is because, you know, men say they want the organic thing, but then they'll cheat on the organic thing with the fake thing. And then when they get the fake thing, they want the organic thing. So God is saying that, yes, he understands that it's been very frustrating for men to date and pursue relationships, and for women to date and pursue relationships. And that while women have been complaining and men have been complaining, God has said that, yes, you're not wrong. There has been this dynamic going on, this shift in gears, and it's been because he's allowed Satan to take the reins and control of that whole, you know, category, right? And God allowed it because he knew that it would be the best teacher. So where, say, this time last year, men weren't looking at women because they were too busy focusing on false, fake online things that weren't even tangible or able to be achieved, and vice versa with women too. But the Lord is saying that now, fast forward here a year later, and now he's been at work in the last while, kind of deconstructing that and having where men are back to the original blueprint, the old-fashioned way, the way things were getting done 20 years ago before we went off track and before Satan took control. To where men are, you know, wanting what is available and at the grocery store and at the library and at the park, as opposed to, you know, what's at the club or the bar or online or things like that, right? And that men are starting to finally try and, like, God is lifting the veil off their eyes and stopping what Satan's been doing and slowly turning the ship back around and getting it back on course, the original course that it was supposed to be on all along. And so again, like I said, I asked God about the derailment. I'm like, why did you derail it in the first place? And God said, because I could have stepped in, of course, and just shut it all down. But had I have, then, you know, it's the same example and analogy with your kids. It wouldn't have gotten shut down. There would have been more sneaking. There would have been more fighting, more problems and errors. Because when, like we know, God doesn't trump our free will. So when someone has the free will to sin or to do bad or wrong, God will sometimes allow that to happen and to go on, because he's teaching you a lesson through that, right? You know what I mean? We always think that, like, and this goes for any sin, like when you're young, you think that, you know, drinking is fun and cool and great and exciting. But what are you thinking when you've been an alcoholic for 20 years and you can't keep a job and you're struggling to pay your rent and you're almost on the verge of homelessness? Is it really cool and fun and exciting now? Right? And so yes, God could have stepped in and said, oh, don't take that drink. No. But he knows that he can't trump your free will and that you would do it anyway, and it can cause resentment against him in the long run. So instead he just lets you have it. Okay, have it your way, you know, do things, go see for yourself. Learn the hard way then, be my guest. you do learn the hard way, then you realize, right? So as you and I already know, life teaches us our lessons. Why we follow God now is because we got sick and tired of ourselves. We got sick and tired of our sins and our sin cycles, right? But it took time. It wasn't overnight. It took us months and years to get down to rock bottom in the sins, and it's taken us some time to pull ourselves out, right? Well, it's the same analogy for when it goes to men and women and relationships and partnerships and dynamics, their thoughts and actions and how they perceived things. 20 years ago, it was perceived a certain way, and due to social media and computers and internet and online and things like that, technology, we have derailed from the original course that God had intended, right? And God's explained to me why he allowed that derailment, right? And now that I see it from his eyes, it makes perfect sense. I'm like, okay, I understand that now. So we're always teaching. We're teaching our children. God is always teaching us, right? And so anyways, so I hope this made sense. So like I said, a couple months back and for the last few years, I noticed men weren't looking and paying attention to women like they once upon a time were, and same with women to men. But I've recently noticed that God is changing gears back onto the original course where we were supposed to be. And so expect to see more of that, of like where it's going to take time. Of course, it took time to get here and it'll take time to get out. But I expect to see more of where, men are trying to approach women in the old-fashioned, more organic way, the way that we would have, say, 20, 30 years ago, right? And expect for, men to start to wake up and see, like, come back around to where they normally were before, not zoned into their cell phone all the time. Because I know from experience what it's like to try to be with someone and date someone and, try to steer the ship towards marriage and doing things the right way, but you can't. It's impossible because that person is constantly focused on their cell phone, right? And what else is out there? What else could they get? Who's looking good today? Who's looking better than you? You know what I mean? And how can a woman compete? No woman and man can compete with that. You cannot be one person competing with a dating site with 5,000 candidates. It's not possible. You know what I mean? So you had to let that man or woman have it. Okay, you want online things? Go have it then. You want to go cheat? Go have it then. You want your cell phone? Go have it then. And you packed your stuff and off you went, right? God did the same thing with all of us. You want to say, no to marriage? Okay, go have it then. You want to bypass family time and doing things my original blueprint design? Go have it then. And at the end of the day, who ends up, coming up short, right? So God is aware of that. So he's got, at this time, he has a lot of broken families and broken homes and kids with single moms and kids with single dads. And he's trying to restructure things, right? So perhaps having that single mom meet that single dad, right? And having the young man and the young woman meet in natural, organic ways so that they aren't single parents 10, 15 years down the road, right? And recognizing there is a need for social media and internet. I'm not saying that there's not, but putting things straight again how they should be. And it starts with the thought process first of how you're going to entertain the opposite sex and perceive them before you can take the actions accordingly, right? So anyways, if I get more details on this, as time goes by, I'll make another update. I hope that this made sense. I hope it helps you, and I hope it blesses whoever comes across it, and God bless.